Welcome to the second episode of VS to Mold 2009 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Armstrong, and joining me as always is the Canadian who combines with the two of us for a total of one tattoo, given that we are counting his massive back tattoo of Kathy's house, Logan Saunders.
Did you guys know that the Titanic was built in Northern Ireland?
I wasn't aware of that, no.
No.
And the guy who has a reputation for raiding the underwear every time he gets the chance, David Bindley.
Good morning.
Good morning. This episode. I'd forgotten that this episode is not a great one.
No. I've sort of seen this season a couple of times, before the subtitles, but every time I skim through this episode, I'm amazed by how bad the first 2/3 of it is. The Ferris wheel challenge is fine. That probably needed a little bit more time, but it's fine. The first two challenges, absolutely horrific.
Yeah, the first challenge, I think it's fair to say, is a quite transparent way to stop them still being in the red.
Yeah.
And they still screw it up.
Yep.
Yeah, they still basically don't earn any money, which is hilarious.
Yeah, this was the most one of the most irrelevant episodes of Venom I think I've seen.
Yeah.
Where it's just just get them above zero. Nobody's going to be executed. Only one of these challenges will be worth watching. And there you go. That's your episode. Now let's get to the real start of the season.
Yeah.
And I know that we talk a lot on our normal Vidum episodes about how the pacing is glacial and they give us far too much information about how much challenges are worth and all that sort of stuff. But this episode needed somebody to just say, Jesus, can you take a breath? And also actually give us maximums.
Half of the stuff in this episode that we learn about the challenges is basically only in a confessional after the fact. Even Peter Yan doesn't bother explaining half of this shit.
No, the exemption rule is entirely in confessional.
Yeah.
The best thing is, it's not even a confessional from somebody involved in the exemptions.
Yeah, it was weird that they about how little they told us about everything that went on this episode, given there was information we really needed to even unpack what was going on. No pun on the suitcase challenge either, with using it with that phrasing.
So, let's actually get into the episode. Previously, 10 famous faces flew to Northern Ireland to be surprised with a brand new twist in mole history that the mole wasn't already selected, but instead a council of old moles would pick them on location. At the warehouse where the Titanic was built, the new mole failed immediately, but the group fell apart when they had to negotiate for the first exemption. At the execution, it was Vera who was first sent packing. And me saying that is actually longer than the actual previously on segment in this episode, because that clocks in at 20 seconds.
What's funny is that we talked about how newer Vidum has glacial pacing, but yet the first two episodes surround the Titanic, and it has the fastest pacing of almost any season.
Yeah. It's noticeable coming off the back, obviously, of us doing Vidum 25 and finishing that last week. It's noticeable how much quicker these two episodes are.
I will say, for all of the issues this episode has with, not really explaining anything very well, it was nice of them to use the map graphics to confirm that Northern Ireland is in the north of Ireland.
Yeah. And I also love how Vera, who's previously on, has absolutely no voiceover from Peter Yan and is 20 seconds long. They do not care about this woman.
Well, they had Sebastiaan, who somehow has adopted the nickname Seabass this episode, where he said he was hurt that Vera left. And then that gets we quickly move on from that, because then I just keep laughing at all the expressions on Mr. Bean's face right afterwards. Second episode, and he is twice as Mr. Beanie as the first episode.
I do also love the fact that they bitch so much about the B&B last episode, and they're not in the B&B. They're in an actual proper chain hotel this episode, and we see nothing of it apart from Peter Yan meeting them outside it.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to film inside.
Nah. So Peter Yan greets them outside on the morning of day 3 and asks for the contestants with the 2 lightest suitcases, and they pick Anniek and Hans. The other 7 will be sent on a challenge one by one themselves, and Dennis volunteers to go first.
I love that they picked Anniek to sit out of this challenge, considering she looked like an emo minion in her little raincoat.
Yeah. I must admit, I know we like them doing different weathers, and obviously when they get to Jordan, it's going to be significantly warmer than it is in Northern Ireland. But it makes it so fucking difficult to tell some of these people apart.
Yeah.
I had to change my notes like 3 or 4 times in this episode because a lot of the women have identical coats.
I think the only two people that I really have an issue with are Rick and Hans. And then sort of I can pick Sebastian out a little bit, but the other two look pretty much exactly the same. And obviously, John's significantly shorter and significantly more Mr. Beanier.
It's Annick and Frauke for me, I think, because
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
when they just randomly appear in the scene, it's very difficult to tell which one is actually there and which one isn't.
Annick is the blonde one, Frauke is the brunette.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, but also this is potato quality from 2009.
Yeah.
And it was a rainy day where they're wearing heavy veiled raincoats.
And they have exactly the same coat. So the 6 non-Dennis people are then dropped off all over Belfast and are told to keep their luggage with them and an eye on the bus. And the only reason they're told to keep their luggage with them is because any unattended luggage left in Belfast will be disposed of by the security services.
I should note that we are recording this, for Michael and I anyway, on St. Patrick's Day.
We are. A bank holiday in Northern Ireland, and a day that I'm sure has lots of festivities in Belfast, some more explosive than others.
And was it just me, or was this really tough to follow with how they just kept throwing people onto the bus without sort of any announcement or acknowledgement? It's just, wait, when did we go from one person who was first on there? We go from Dennis, and then suddenly Frauke is on the bus, Paula's on the bus, Rick. I was waiting for Carol to be on the bus too, just with how they were all just parachuted in there.
Well, they had Peter Yarn explain the challenge. They can't expect you to do that and have time for the actual challenge. They showed Dennis doing it, and then they showed whoever was second, Frauke or Vivian, whichever one it was.
It was Fracture or Annick, I can't remember which, genuinely.
Yeah. I think it was Frauke, but they get through Dennis, they get through whichever one of the women was second, and then basically everyone else, they're like, okay, we're bored now, let's just get to the fun bit at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was really, really rushed to where anybody who is in the audience or anybody watching the episode at the time, I'm sure, was just completely lost by what was going on.
I'm not in the best kind of mindset today to be looking at this challenge and trying to pay attention to it because I'm incredibly tired. But I can only imagine how people 16 years ago were looking at this and just going, I have no idea who was on that bus, who wasn't, what happened, how many pieces people actually put on the clothesline. It just, yeah.
And you can't even pick out like who is sabotaging what because of how little information we are given during the challenge. And plus, there's the extra additional fact that it's dealing with people's luggage, which I was about to say carries its own baggage, but
Well, not anymore.
And this is during that stretch of Venom where just as much as the laser game was a tradition, the luggage challenge, for some reason, just became a set tradition they had to do at least once each season. But you never hear contestants say, oh, it's the luggage challenge.
Huh.
And this is one of those prime examples of, I mean, we're going to get, it's going to pay off in the Japan season, next season. But how many times can you really say that, oh, you know what was the highlight of this season? The luggage challenge. And this is just a way where they're trying to come up with another way to implement the luggage challenge. And it does not work well on TV at all.
Yeah. And I do also love the fact that it's a blink and you'll miss it thing. But having been to Belfast, I think Rick was waiting on the most famous street in Belfast, the Falls Road, which is basically Belfast's biggest centre of sectarian tension. Like, that is not somewhere you want to be left alone with your luggage. I'm like 99% sure that he was on the Falls Road, and they do not acknowledge it.
Oh, wow.
And there was such an easy way to break this challenge because for each piece of luggage that's removed, you get €100. So all you have to do is just remove all 100 pieces of luggage from the clothesline and you earn 10,000 euros. Because production is not going to just say, okay, nobody has any luggage for the entire rest of the season for the remaining 15 or 16 days of the season.
I'm also trying to work out which hotel they stayed in because it'll be on the sightseeing route. Weirdly, when I typed in Falls Road murals to make sure I'm right, it did come up with the route map of the Belfast City sightseeing thing, which is hilarious. Unsurprisingly, the Titanic is one of the stops on that.
I love that the sightseeing tourist bus goes down Falls Road.
Yeah, it genuinely does. It's one of the stops. So I think he actually might have been waiting outside the International Wall murals, which is the stop after the Falls Road. But still, they did drive a bus through the Falls Road for this challenge, definitely.
I can only imagine what the audio is through the headphones for the hop-on, hop-off bus about that area.
Yeah. So Peter, Jan, and Dennis board the sightseeing bus, and he's told that the 7 candidates who are left will be continuing the journey with just 100 pieces of luggage between them. Those 100 pieces need to be hung on clotheslines, and as the rest of them board, they're told the instructions and have 4 minutes each to decide what they're keeping. When Hans and Anniek are reunited with the group outside the SSE Odyssey, another one of the stops and Belfast's biggest arena as far as I'm aware, they get €100 for each item taken off the line, and they have 5 minutes to decide what they will leave people with.
I did like when he was explaining the challenge, Peter Young was like, "You're all attached to your luggage. I understand. I am too," which is one, super creepy. Like, why is he so attached to Paula's bra and Sebastian's mankini? And two, that's more than can be said for Sam Huygens.
Very true. And fun fact about the SSE Arena as it is now, I believe it is the largest capacity of any ice hockey arena in the UK anymore, because the Manchester Storm used to play at the Manchester Arena, famous for another bombing, and that is about 20 odd thousand capacity. The SSE Arena is 10,000, but the Belfast Giants play there.
Well, to be fair, if there's going to be a bombing, you want a lot of ice around to stop the fire.
Yeah, the ice rink wasn't there at that point. It was too expensive for the Manchester Storm to continue playing there. They went bankrupt and now play at basically Ice Town outside of Manchester with a capacity of about 3,000.
That's like the same as an arena in Vernon.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be an outlier, the Manchester Arena. The Manchester Storm used to have the largest home capacity of any team by like a country mile because the Manchester Arena is such a large capacity. It also used to be the home of the basketball team. So they used to have to cover up the ice rink, put a basketball court in, and then take the basketball court, take the ice rink out, and put the actual arena stuff in whenever anyone was playing there.
I'm just looking. My local basketball court has 3,100 seats, like just in like the outer suburbs of Melbourne, which is not a basketball city.
No, the Manchester Arena capacity is 21,000, which is one of the largest of any arena in the UK. But that used to be the capacity of the Storm. They did not fill out 21,000 seats every week.
No way.
Is the basketball arena called in outside of Melbourne? Is it called the Luke Longley Arena?
Oh no, they went with the very creative name of the State Basketball Centre.
Even better.
I was going to say, if I know anything about Australian sports arena naming, it'll be named after someone with a deeply ironic connection to it. Because, like, Harold Holt, former Prime Minister, disappeared when he went into the sea, so they named a swimming pool after it.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply inappropriate.
And then they named, one of the tennis courts at Melbourne Park after Margaret Court, who is very much not the sort of person you want to be naming anything after.
Certainly not anymore.
No. Personally, I think they should have renamed it the Tina Arena.
So they want to take at least 20 items off the line to get the pot back to zero, and they decide to raid the underwear.
It was quite literally a panty raid.
Yeah. And you should be thankful that I did not associate you with the panty raid. And they take 23 items for a total of €2,300 of 10,000 for the challenge.
I suppose they're lucky they went to a decent hotel the night before and had a chance to wash all their clothes before they got, basically paraded around the middle of Belfast.
At least there were no like mosquitoes and flies and bugs hovering around people's underwear on the bus.
No, but what there was outside the SSE Odyssey, as it was at the time, was a lot of rain, so everything that they actually saved will have been soaked. It was visibly peeing it down, and it did make me laugh that you could see everything on the lines were getting so soaked. And of course, as we found out last week, they've not got their credit cards anymore, so they can't even buy themselves new clothes as they would otherwise.
No.
Why don't they all just threaten to quit?
Petey Ann then also asks who the treasurer is now they've actually got money, and Sebastian immediately volunteers despite everyone else's disgust.
They were very disgusted with that.
I love, he holds his hand out, and rather than wait for them to argue and work out who it is, Peter Yarn's like, well, you assholes can argue about it later, and then he takes his new wash in and just walks off with it.
Yeah. So Peter Yan then meets them as a group later on and asks for 4 people who want to do an assignment, and it is Dennis, Sebastian, Frauke, and Hans who volunteer. They are taken to the offices of the Titanic, where lots of money is hidden, and they have to find it.
But luckily for them, everybody is working from home today.
Yeah. However, also hidden inside the offices is one exemption, and the challenge will end when the exemption is found. And he recommends that the exemption holder finds it when they're alone.
Why alone?
I could not work that out.
I'm assuming it's so that they don't just decide to collude and force the non-elimination.
Yeah.
Create some suspense to it.
Yeah, it happens anyway, but there are no consequences to them really sharing the information, I would say.
No.
It's not like the exemptions get taken away if they find out who has them. One quick bit of admin point. What are we setting the maximum of this challenge at?
Well, by the end of the episode, the max value I had by the end of episode 2 was 25,000 euros even. So let's see. I think I had 5,000 euro maximum.
Yeah, it's 20,000 plus whatever's in the offices, I think, so far. I think it probably was 5, but nobody actually ever says it.
No, but based on just what they collected, and I was doing the math roughly in my head, I'm thinking 5,000 seems like a good number.
Yeah. Well, they end up finding almost 5,000, and we see for basically the last half of the second group, there is pretty much nothing left in the building. So, I would assume there's basically 5,000 in there, and then once you realize after that the notes are only in half, I would probably cut it down to about 2.5.
Well, if there was 5,000 of notes hidden in each half, or half 5,000 notes in each half, this is very confusing. I would say that the maximum would be 5,000 then. If you could theoretically get 5,000 in each section, then I would say the maximum must be 5,000 in that case.
Okay, let's go with that.
Plus 25,000 is a nice round number, as Saunders said.
Wait. I was right?
For once, Saunders, you were right. It doesn't happen very often, as we found out on Vidum, but occasionally you're right.
I'm the best around. Okay, I'm done.
Cool. Sebastian finds it in an envelope on the staircase, and an air horn sounds.
I was not expecting that. The Peter Yan air horn.
And it's not just an air horn. He basically holds it down until the battery goes flat.
Yeah. It could have been a lot worse, though.
I mean, it's Northern Ireland. Like, get some bagpipes in there. Jeez.
Yeah. The siren basically just blends in with the rest of the environment.
But just a horrible low drone. It's just the sound of Northern Ireland is just
a horrible low drone. His name is John, and Logan likes him. There were some really funny visuals in the first part of this challenge, though, because we got Sebastian climbing through a windowless door frame, Frauke going up an incredibly rickety-looking scaffold.
Yeah, I'm very surprised she was allowed to do that.
That was a tall ladder, too.
Yeah. Dennis tipping over a table just loaded with books that probably haven't been touched since 1975.
I threw it on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm an adult.
I'm an adult.
And we got Frauke missing the envelope that was right next to her.
Yeah, I thought that was quite suspicious that she just somehow did not spot the bright green envelope.
We saw like a couple of missed envelopes because I think I think Dennis missed one right at the start as well, but at least that was like in the other direction. We could see it in the background. Frauke was basically staring right at the envelope and didn't see it.
So Sebastian doesn't admit that he has the exemption to the rest of the group, but they do find €1,900 of, as we find out later, half notes in the offices.
And €500 would be deducted after the ransacking of that building.
And the other five are waiting for them at dinner, and they have been doing absolutely nothing all afternoon.
Yeah, have they been inside that restaurant just the whole time?
I don't know, because, like, surely they must have been doing something.
Or production's like, hey, do each of you want to record 3 hours worth of confessionals right now?
They were drying their laundry.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the mole's just sat there with Peter Yan actually in the background doing briefings of the mole for the next 7 episodes. And which AI voice do you want to use this week?
The Hamburglar.
I want to use the inherently suspicious Welsh one.
Or use can I use the Mr. Bean voice from the Mr. Bean movie for my AI voice?
So the other 5 are then sent into the offices as well, but after sundown, and there is also an exemption hidden there. This time, though, they have 90 minutes total and can enter one by one.
I mean, I know, like, Cambodia obviously had its issues, but God, it was nice that Cambodia had a budget for lighting the night challenge this season.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just because obviously we're 16 years on at this point, but it's potato quality, some of the visuals
Yeah.
in this episode. It's more noticeable this week than last week, I think, because they do hinge a challenge on the dark. But yeah, not ideal.
No. You can kind of feel like the editors were sort of leaning into the, the nature of this building as, people don't want to go there and all that sort of stuff. But, like, this feels like they're trying to do, like, a particularly creepy X-Files episode and not a good one.
Yeah. So John's the first sent in because he's not good in dark and tight spaces. Plus, he's a bit night blind. He finds €250 and then 10. He then finds €1,000 and another 250. And upstairs, he finds 20 and 500. He does, however, not find the exemption.
I wish when Mr. Bean was searching the offices that when he says, "Oh, here are some showers, here are some toilets," that there would be a skeleton of somebody sitting on the toilet when he opens the door. There's been somebody who died on the toilet in here from 80 years ago. Oh, and there's the exemption.
See, if they were doing this challenge now, it would have been haunted house themed. There would have been attackers with laser guns.
I see you.
Yeah, there would have been creepy chambermaids. There would have just been something else. It might have just been someone dressed up as a sea captain just attacking them and scaring the living bejesus out of them. But I can't believe I'm saying this about an early Venom challenge, but it just needed something more.
I mean, to be fair, this is a challenge about the Titanic, and we did get a siren.
Yeah.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Pun!
It just needed something to spice it up and maybe scare the living shit out of Mr. Bean. So he just go, "Boop, boop, 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 boop." But it just needed something. I think this challenge.
I'm just thinking, it is nicer than to cast Mr. Bean and then give the team like a bright yellow vehicle to get around Belfast in.
Very true. The worrying thing will be when that yellow bus comes back when they go to Jordan and they're just struggling every time to get it through the desert. So Vivienne's the second to enter. They lament not getting her to search downstairs, and she finds €500 and then goes looking for the exemption. And she finds another €500 and leaves.
And they'll get suspicious because of how quiet she was on the walkie-talkie.
Anniek is third and also climbs the stairs. She finds an empty envelope twice and then heads back down. Rick's fourth, and he heads to the one area they've not been, which is the basement, and he finds €500 there. Paula goes in last as her and Rick were the least scared. John guides her to an envelope on a window, but it's empty, and he admits that he just left some empty envelopes there.
He just finds it hysterical that he managed to direct her to one of his empty envelopes.
Yeah, but that's not the first time. He does it like 3 times, I think. And they get a total of €2,300 from the offices, but did anyone find the exemption? PCN crashes the day 4 breakfast and looks at the money, and the notes they collected were actually half notes, so for its count, it had to match with the money the other group found. And they matched €1,350 of, as we're saying now, 5,000 for the challenge.
I don't get how, between two groups and having overnight to look at this, they didn't notice these were half notes.
Yeah. It's almost like the treasurer just does not look at the cash. It's just like, yeah, I'm just going to assume that I've actually been given money.
Maybe they should put a clue on the note sometime.
Yeah, maybe. That would be a step too far, I think, putting any clues on the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think people would just figure it out really quickly.
Yeah.
It'd be too obvious.
PEN also tells them that both exemptions were found, and that if both exemptions are played at the same time, it will cancel the execution. Each one that is played on their own, though, will save not just its holder, but someone of their choice. And Sebastian admits to John that he got the first exemption and offers to protect him in exchange for some information.
I should note that everything you've said over the last 5 minutes was covered in only about the span of about 20 to 30 seconds in the episode. Like, we don't get, like they said, oh, each person is going to search the office for 16 minutes and then a 2 minute debrief each time the person comes in. We don't even see, like, any of the last 2 or 3 debriefs that each contestant has coming out of the office. It just cuts straight into the breakfast, and then Peter Yan's like, "Oh, by the way, here's the whole exemption twist." Bye.
Yeah, the thing that makes me laugh the most, though, is the fact that they make Rick tell us what the exemption twist is, even though, he's irrelevant to the exemption twist. There is no reason for Rick to be given any confessionals here.
Maybe he's the only one who caught on to what Peter Yan was even saying. Maybe no one else was really paying attention.
Well, we don't even see Peter Yan say it to them. He just tells them that 2 people have got exemptions, and then they let Rick tell
Right.
us that this is the twist.
Maybe Peter Yan forgot to tell them, and it was just explained off camera to them by a producer. And the rest are like, "Oh yeah, that is interesting."
Yeah.
How do you feel about the twist?
It's a fun way to do a non-elimination,
Hmm.
but I think it would have been very interesting if it didn't immediately happen.
Yeah, like I think it's an interesting idea, but it's probably a bitch for production if they're A, kept for a while, and B, not used at the same time. Because like if you get to episode 5 or 6, whatever, and neither of them have been used, you're really banking on them being used in the same episode to get the non-elimination in time.
Yeah. Because I will say, just to warn you, Saunders, every episode from here on out is an execution and someone goes home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
There is no more non-eliminations in this season.
Yeah, I draw the parallel between this twist and Survivor Co. Wrong, where they had the super idol twist, where you combine 2 idols and then it's the super idol. It's kind of what this is here, where you combine 2 exemptions and the execution gets canceled. Where it's interesting to see it play out once or twice, but again, it leaves it so open ended where, oh, it might just get used right away and then there's no real payoff to the twist, or somehow it becomes irrelevant to the season if no one really plays it.
Yeah, and like I think from memory, not to spoil too much, but I think from memory there's an exemption in the final 4 episode. So really the last chance you have for the non-elimination is episode 7, which means you really need to know whether or not this is going to happen by about episode 4 in order to sort something out in time. And I don't think it's coincidental that Peter Young was sort of putting his thumb on the scale by reminding them how the thing worked at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I think it's a better exemption twist or a better group exemption twist than they like to do now, where it's just blatantly, you have to do this, we don't care. Because if you think the group exemption twist in Japan was, do you want to buy a green screen? Do you want to go to Tokyo? This is significantly better than that.
Yeah, I think that one was like an emergency one because they couldn't do the torpedo challenge properly because whoever it was went home sick that episode.
Manuel, it was, yeah.
More like man unwell.
Yeah, so like they had that challenge with Barbara, I think it was, who like you had the 4 green tokens, the 4 red tokens, and basically she got one from each other person, and then if she completed the green token, the green torpedo thing, she basically got saved, and that was the non-elimination. But because Manuel went home that episode, they couldn't use that as a non-elimination anyway. So they basically rigged that challenge, gave them some free money, and then had to come up with this, pay some money for an exemption thing later on in the season. I wonder if maybe they would have done something like that if the twist didn't work out here. But
I would assume there'd be some sort of contingency plan for, if we desperately... Because it could just be not that this twist didn't work out, but what if there's another episode where somebody ends up quitting or getting sick and has to leave the game? I'm sure they always think of what's the hokiest way we can implement a non-elimination, because they've certainly done it not just in Japan but a couple other times of, okay, we really need a non-elimination here. Let's just come up with some really random convoluted way that the audience won't be able to follow and just say, okay, I guess it's just a non-elimination twist.
And hello to old Jay Goulson if she's listening.
Yeah. While you guys were talking, I've just been having a quick look at the cast of this season. Did you know that two of them hosted a TV show together?
Prior to or after?
Prior to.
Oh. Who's hosting, Saunders?
God, you could have a guess if you want. Who's hosting Saunders?
Let's see. Sebastiaan and Anniek?
Oof, you got one of them. It was Sebastiaan and Frauke.
Oh.
They presented a show that I believe translates to 3 on Tour for 2 years together. Sebastiaan did it from 2007 to 2009. Frauke did it from 2008 to 2009. In 2009, Daphne from Vidum 14 took over, as did Dennis from this season. Nicolette also did it from 2010. Chris Zegers still does it now from 2012. Evie did it from 2014. Jan
just the whole Vidum
from 2015.
They cast from the same 2 or 3 shows every year, Logan.
Yeah. Menifer did it from 2020 to 24. Yora's done it since 2022. Sahil's done it since 2022. That's it, I think. I think that's it.
So what you're saying is it's really, really funny that Sebastiaan gave his exemption to John.
Yeah, these people actually know each other, and yet Sebastiaan still gave his exemption to John.
What is this, New Zealand?
Also, Frauke used to be a gymnast. She began her career as a gymnast.
Huh.
Or turnster, as they say in Dutch.
You know what was funny during the office search was Frauke trying to jump up to see if there was an exemption on top of that one cabinet.
Yeah.
Where she just kept repeatedly jumping up and down 3 times like a little kid, like trying to get cookies from on top of the cupboard. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, this isn't the only time this episode that we'll be learning about how small people are in this cast, I think.
No.
So Peter Yan meets the group at the Belfast Wheel. Rick and Vivienne are told to enter a cabin to begin the challenge, followed by Paula and Hans, Anniek and Sebastiaan, and Frauke and John. Dennis is left over and is told that the wheel can stop 10 times maximum, and he's got 4 questions to answer. Each answer is 2 candidates who must be in the same cabin by the end of the 10 stops. Each time the wheel stops, someone must leave a cabin and the person who's left at the bottom must enter one, and they have 2 minutes to decide each time. Each correct cabin after 10 stops is worth €500 for the pot.
I like how Anniek immediately presses to listen to the information about the area, and then the voice just comes on right away and says, "Oh, well, let me tell you about the Titanic." Have you been to the Titanic warehouse? Have you been to the Titanic offices?
Fun fact, Book of Mormon does not exist as a musical in Northern Ireland because it's just the Book of Titanic. It's, hello, have you heard about the Titanic? It's an amazing ship. So Dennis decides to bring Hans and Paula in cabin 11 down first and has 2 minutes to relay the information to Paula while he joins Hans. And that means they have the question about a combined number of tattoos as 2 correct already. She brings cabin number 2 down with Rick and Vivienne and asks Rick to step out. Meanwhile, Sebastiaan and Frauke are circling each other for information about exemptions. Paula entering the cabin makes another answer correct, which is the same postcode. Now, Rick tries to work out who has a combined height of 3.53 meters, which, for context, is roughly about 3 of Bindles. And he brings cabin 32 down.
I like how Seabass, for about 90% of the challenge, was just focused on talking to people about the exemption. I have the exemption. Oh, wait, do I have the exemption? No, wait, do you have it? Wait, what are you going to do with it? No, I'm not inferring that I have it. Or am I inferring that I have it? That would just drive me nuts.
Well, I presume Sebastian was just trying to work out who had the other one so that they could, combine forces and stop anyone having to go home. Because it's very rare for there to be a non elimination that has zero consequences for the group. With the exception of, in the end, Anniek finding out that she would have got the red screen. Like, usually there's a cost to a non elimination, and there is no cost in this episode.
If anything, there's a reward because Annie gets to find out she was on the wrong track.
Yeah.
I wish that each time that somebody was asked to get out of the cabin, that Get Out by JoJo would start playing.
Or maybe they should just take a leaf out of Belkia Canary Island's book and just have them be greeted by, "Move, bitch, get out the way!" Oh, it's Smack My Bitcher, wasn't it? Damn it. That joke doesn't work.
Now remember, Belfast is where the Titanic was made, so remember, floor is iceberg.
Rick then chooses John to leave and tells him he has to get into a cabin with Sebastian in the hope that their house numbers combine to 10. He takes Anniek out, but doesn't know why, because he gets very confused about the objective of this challenge. She brings Rick out again. Meanwhile, Dennis and Hans are debating whether the exemptions will be played. Rick brings cabin 11 down, and he and Dennis work out that Anniek and he must be the house numbers. He swaps with Frauke, who has 0 tattoos.
I think my favourite thing in the middle of this challenge, we see a shot of the board at one point, and it's covered in writing.
That was my next note too.
But none of it is in the big empty space beneath the questions. It's all like just like surrounding in little tiny like text next to the 4 questions at the top of the page, and then you've got like a huge like desk-sized piece of paper that's just completely blank otherwise.
It's like teacher notations on your homework.
Yeah.
What they absolutely should have done, and what Dennis should have done first, is draw a table at the bottom with the 4 cabin numbers and who's in it, and just have them cross out when someone's taken out and write in the next name. Because it makes it so confusing for everyone involved in this challenge. The fact that they've basically just got to guess from very tiny scrolls who's actually in which cabin and hope that they're right.
It doesn't help that they get to, like the 6th or 7th move before they realise they're not looking for 2 people whose house number is 10. That they need 2 people whose house numbers add up to 10.
Yeah. And with 2 questions left, inexplicably, they actually have 3 of the 4 cabins correct. Sebastian's then taken out to have the final decision, and he brings cabin 2 down, which takes Paula out, and he blames Rick for giving him bad information. And the wheel ends as a result with 2 correct pairs for a total of €1,000 of 2,000 for the challenge, €4,650 of 17,000 for the episode, and 2,600 of 25,000 for the season so far.
I like at the end when Seabass makes the final switch that Peter Yan just says, You have to make a decision, Seabass. You have to make a decision now. 3, 2, 1 now. He should have pulled at that point. He should have just pulled out his air horn to just startle Seabass to make him make the final decision.
Time up. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that after 2 episodes, this season is already at half of the maximum of Vidum 25.
Oh boy.
Which coincidentally is €25,000. Foreshadowing.
Yeah. They ended up with exactly €50,000 as the maximum for Vidum 25, which means that 25,000 already is a lot of money.
And the pot size is at €2,650, which corresponds to the number of passengers that were on board the Titanic right before it sank.
It's 2,600, I think.
Well, maybe they miscounted.
Yeah, you joked him. Sorry, I did it. No, you're right. It was 2,650, I think. Yeah, because it was 1,350. I apologize. You are correct for once, Saunders.
Twice in one episode.
And I'm worried about you.
Between that and the glacial pacing pun joke I made at the beginning, I'm just on I'm on a roll. I'm on a tear.
Yeah.
I'm on a tear like an iceberg in the Titanic.
I think my favourite part of this challenge is like in one of the cabins, we just see the conversation. Do you know how tall Sebastian is? Tall.
Yeah. That was Dennis, I think. Just giving no information about Sebastian whatsoever.
I think his name starts with an S, or is it a C?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't. Sebastian's his middle name.
I like the panic right before when they realize what the final switch needs to be, and they're like panicking, knocking on the cabin door, yelling at Sebastian to switch them out.
Did anyone get why like Hans was utterly confused by the concept of Rick actually talking to the other people about this challenge?
I mean, to be fair, we are very confused by Rick talking whenever Vidum happens. So,
Yeah.
Any Rick, really.
yeah,
Mm.
any Rick will do. So, it's now time for the test. 20 questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home except for the mole who can never go home. If both exemptions are played, then the execution will be cancelled.
It's null and void.
Yep.
Did they just get like a bulk discount for renting out this warehouse?
It's the same warehouse, isn't it?
It was the same warehouse, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So that like they do the first episode basically almost entirely at the shipyards. Then they do this episode almost entirely at the warehouse, at the offices.
You can see the pile of books that Dennis pushed over in the challenge. It's still they didn't even pick up the books yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably, like I said last week, they will have been on a fairly tight leash in Belfast, I think, for safety concerns. I think it's probably easier for them as a production to just go, yeah, we've rented this location, let's just use it as much as we can.
Yeah. I like. I know there's only two landmarks in Northern Ireland, and they don't go to the Giant's Causeway, but this is ridiculous at this point.
Yes, it is. Because I seem to remember next week's big highlight is going to a bus station and using a payphone.
Is that where the passengers or the people who worked on the Titanic? Is that the bus they took to get to the Titanic?
I presume so, yes.
Because they couldn't afford their own vehicle.
I don't remember the scenery being particularly inspiring next week. So, Annick's mole is Sebastian. He was very suspicious in screwing up the wheel and costing them €500. Vivienne says the mole had one of the two lightest suitcases. Sebastian plays his exemption. He's safe regardless, as is John, and he spreads between Rick and Annick. Rick says the mole was at the bottom of the wheel once. John says that Sebastian could be the mole, and he'd be taking a bigger risk having a deal with the mole, but he's going for Rick. Hans says the mole found no envelopes. Frauke says that Dennis has the gift of lots of information from lots of people, which is weird and would be a good mole. Paula says the mole boarded the bus first. And Dennis is suspecting Hans because he left €8,000 hanging literally on the clotheslines, but did bring €2,300, which makes it a bit more difficult.
I have a question. If Sebastian and Anniek both played their exemptions, why did they do the test at all? Because, like, whether it's a non elimination or not, they were both safe. Like, I get John doing it because he doesn't know they've saved him, but why did Sebastian and Anniek do it?
I presume they wanted the big kind of shock moment of someone getting a red screen and going, psych, you're actually not going home. But it's weird. I did wonder why they were still making them do the test, and obviously it would have tipped off to us who had the second exemption if they'd not given Annick any test scenes. But yeah, because I wonder how they would have handled it if Annick was the only person to have played an exemption. Would they have given her a green screen?
Hmm.
Or would they have still let her have the red screen and go, oh, by the way, you played your exemption, so you're safe regardless?
Oh, and then if she's not the mole, that gives her a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So they all head to the execution table to find out their fate. One of them will get a red screen, but whether that red screen sends someone home depends on how many exemptions are in the box and who they were played for. Frauke and Sebastian get green screens before Annick is the one to get the red. However, she did have an exemption from one of the quote-unquote empty envelopes she found, sending everyone through to episode 3, as both exemptions were played. And John ends up being both of their choices to take through with them.
Let's take through Mr. Bean.
I love that Peter Young didn't even have to explain what was going on. He just sort of like eyes the little box the exemptions were placed into, and then Anniek cracks up.
Yeah.
And then like a second later, Dennis cracks up.
Yeah, because I think they all probably suspected that Annick had an exemption anyway. And then when she gets the red screen and she's just like, oh, what a shame. Guess I'm going home then.
Yeah.
They all know that she played the exemption at that point, I think.
The exemption is null and void, just like a return ticket for the Titanic.
I think my favorite bit is like she didn't play the exemption to get the non-elimination. She played it basically just to stop Paula from digging through her bags.
Yeah, because she was too terrified that Paula was going to basically frisk her like she was Ellie Loost 7 years earlier.
Yeah.
So, next time, they run around Belfast, John performs, there is a demolition derby, and Rick overhears some strategy.
Strategery.
First question for you, Saunders. What do you think the mole did in this episode? Because Bindles and I can't comment because we know what the mole did in this episode.
Maybe discourage too many pieces of luggage from being taken down from the clothesline. I don't know, but they really needed money at that point, so maybe the mole didn't even bother doing anything there. However, in that second challenge, given that no one was really being accounted for one another, one of them would be either A, make the... Now, you wouldn't want to just grab the exemption yourself. That would be too obvious. So, I mean, if Annex the mole, that was a great way to play, to just find empty envelope, and then your cover as well. It's because I found the exemption, which is what everyone else would go for anyway. She didn't find any money there. So that'd be an ideal way to play it as the mole. It's just say, oh, they're all empty envelopes that I wasted my time on. And then for the, the cabin challenge on the Belfast wheel, given that each player had a couple minutes alone with the easel most of the time, that they could just write in whatever notes and sow as much confusion. I think that's the main thing there, especially with people not knowing whether the house numbers add up to 10 or if it is just the number 10. Because then people were unsure about who was supposed to go where, and even losing track of who was in which cabin, which is why I think they only got 2 out of all 4. They should have had all 4 cabins filled easily. So in other words, this episode was a very mole friendly episode, because there was a lot where, especially the last 2 challenges, where there was really no one to keep track of what you were doing specifically.
Yeah. I do wonder with the wheel challenge what would have happened if they got all 4 after like 5 switches, which was theoretically possible. It would have been difficult, but it was possible.
Well, Peter Yarn said at the start they had a maximum of 10 switches. It wasn't
Yeah,
you
good
had
point.
to take all 10. So I assume if they get all 4, they win instantly.
Yeah. Because if they had a maximum of 10, then Sebastiaan could have turned around and gone, now we've got 3 correct, and bank 3. Because that's what I would have done in his situation. I wouldn't have continued on to a 10th round to try and get 4. I would have just gone, we got 3 already.
Like the weakest link rules?
Yeah.
Just yell bank?
They didn't really clarify those rules too much for us, I would say. So, final 2 questions, Saunders. Who do you suspect and who's going home next week? Because someone's going home next week.
And who's Flemish?
And who's Flemish? Yeah, I forgot about that question. So, 3 questions then. Who do you suspect? Who's going home? And who is the sneaky Belgian in this cast?
Sneaky Belgian.
Who's Flemish, Saunders?
I think Vivian is still Flemish. She's giving some major Flemmy vibes. I don't know why that tickled me. Annick's a top suspect for me still.
Okay.
Just because I think she's playing too much into the whole, oh, I'm so confused, I don't know what's going on at all. I mean, I would expect Mr. Bean to behave like that. But I feel like Annick's really pushing that angle way too much. She used that angle in 2 out of 3 challenges. Vivian as my second suspect, then Fraukia, then Sebastian, then Rick, then Paula, then Hans, and then I have Dennis because I realized, wait a second, would they pick somebody with the same name to be the mole 2 seasons in a row? I think not. I just couldn't see them going with 2 Dennises back-to-back seasons.
Denai.
Denai, yeah. And then Mr. Bean. I just can't see Mr. Bean just coming out of the shadows being revealed to be the mole the whole time.
Okay, interesting.
Well, imagine, like, what do you do for that reveal? Do you zoom out to like that teddy bear and that funny little vehicle he drives around? What do you do for a Mr. Bean mole reveal?
Well, presumably something with a Ferris wheel.
Yeah. And who's going home next week, Saunders?
I just hope Mr. Bean lasts another episode. Let's say Paula. I think Paula's going to go home.
So what you're saying is much like the Titanic, Paula's going down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else you want to say about this episode?
No, I'm good.
I feel like I started out with the glacial pacing pun, and then I'm good. I'm good on the Titanic references.
Good idea. In that case, thank you for listening to our VS Mole 2009 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for an old mole in Northern Ireland and Jordan. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media platform except TikTok, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact at rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors and get early access to the rest of the episodes of this season. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.
You get a chartreuse screen. You get a chartreuse screen. Everybody gets a chartreuse screen.